You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the NFL with AJL, episode 118. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in on the brand new edition of the show as we've got all things college football week 4 coming right at you. You already see who's in the studio at NFL with AJL, at Marcus Talk Sports. Y'all make sure to get down in the description of the show to check out the link for every bit of social media and podcast content. Make sure to like and share, follow, hit the bell, subscribe, all the things you do to engage with us on social media. Marcus, like I said, we had a pretty solid week of college football week 4, not like it was the week 1 or maybe even the last week where we had the instant reaction, but some solid SEC matchups and really just some solid games all around, as I think next weekend is, of course, going to be a big one in week 5.
Yeah, next weekend's going to be the big one. That's the week that's been circled on my calendar anyway since the schedule was put out. So you might not see me next weekend. I'm either going to be in a hole somewhere crying or I'm going to be running the streets of DC celebrating. We'll see how it goes. But it's always a pleasure to be here. So
we got Georgia, Alabama, and then we've got Oregon and Penn State, correct? In Happy Valley.
Happy Valley. Yeah.
I gotta see what time that game kicks, because I definitely want to catch both of those. That day is definitely going to be engulfed and just completely taken over of the same actions. Like, I'm either going to be parading the streets of probably where I shouldn't be with a Georgia win, or I'm going to be hiding and cowering away from everybody that's like, wow, bro, you guys really had this one in the bag. You were really supposed to bring it home against Alabama. And it's, I don't want to hear the same old song and dance from these people. So, but yeah, next week is going to be crazy. But like we said, y'all like and share wherever you're watching. Get in the comments. Check us out on social media. Please subscribe on YouTube. And the description just contains everything that you need to know about the show. Syracuse sends Clemson to 1-3. Another devastating ACC matchup, it feels like, for the Clemson Tigers. And you were clearly onto something, man, a few weeks ago. The downfall of Dabo Swinney is here. It is continuing to happen. This is the first time in the Dabo Swinney era that they have been 1-3. I think the worst as a Clemson Tigers organization since 2008. And there's always been this saying around here that Dabo Swinney is one of those untouchable college coaches. He's become the standard of the ACC, which is kind of slipping now. But now things are changing. This season is shaping out very differently. You have a very overhyped quarterback in Cade Klubnik who is just not able to perform on a consistent level. What are your takeaways from this game, Marcus?
I mean, I think you've got two big things. The first thing is, I'm right. We're done. The Clemson Tiger experience, it's done. It's over. There is no more aura. There is no more fear. Right? This wasn't Clemson on the road in Syracuse. This was Syracuse in Death Valley after a lightning delay, getting a win over Clemson. Clemson shouldn't be ranked after this week. I'd be shocked if they are. But then again, Notre Dame's 0-2 and they were ranked heading into this week. So crazier things have happened. But you take a look at what happened. I mean, big things that stuck out to me.
They ranked them.
I certainly hope not. This wasn't all bad for Clemson, right? Adam Randall, their running back, had 227 all-purpose yards, 130 on the ground. He had 44 receiving at a touchdown. TJ Moore had 8 for 92. Wesco had 79 receiving yards as well. Cade Klubnik, 363 and 3 touchdowns, but he threw the ball 60 times, and they turned the ball over late in that game as well.
Yeah.
On Syracuse side of things, it almost kind of felt that game started off and, they go down, they score the opening drive, and then it almost kind of felt like you're New Orleans Saints in that Super Bowl, come right out and just onside kick it. Like, let's just surprise it. Let's pounce on them.
It was so weird.
It was really weird, but it worked. And they ended up going up 2-0, and they didn't look back after that. I mean, again, like I've said it before twice now on this show, the aura of the Clemson Tigers is gone. The aura of Dabo Swinney is gone. Cade Klubnik, the most overrated quarterback in the nation, not named Arch Manning through 4 weeks of college football. I think it's pretty safe
DJ Lagway.
That is the case. Or DJ Lagway. You're right. I think it's pretty safe to say that at this point. I don't know how Clemson recovers. I don't think they can recover, especially not when you look at a Miami team that is now undefeated. You look at a Florida State team that is also undefeated. Like, that is now likely the overwhelming ACC championship matchup. And at 3 losses, even if you went out, which probably would include a win against one or both of those teams at 9-3, it still might not be enough for Clemson to even sneak in as the 12th seed in the college football playoff. So there's a lot to figure out. They did say at the end of the broadcast, so the defensive coaching hasn't been great. Obviously, Dabo Swinney hasn't been great, but there's a lot of blame to go around. But at the end of the day, this falls squarely on the shoulders of Dabo Swinney, because there was an opportunity here this season for Dabo to really stake Clemson's claim and kind of dispel all doubt that they truly were not just the best team in the conference, but still one of the heavy hitting teams in the nation. And through 4 weeks in the season, they failed to do that. Right. They are no longer on that tier with Alabama and the Georgias and the Ohio States and even the Penn States and the Oregons of the world. They are no longer on even that second tier of teams who can maybe catch lightning in a bottle and get one quick upset and see themselves in a national championship like we saw Notre Dame do last season. They're not even on the third tier of teams, with teams, like a Texas or teams like a Tennessee who probably need a little bit of help to get hot. But if they do get hot, everything's clicking, who knows what can happen. They are on a tier of teams of disappointments. And of all of the teams that you would expect to be struggling this early in the season, Clemson wasn't on anybody's list except for mine. So I just want to say Ame is right. The downfall of Dabo is here. And I think at this point, I would say they'll be lucky to win 6 games with the way they've looked so far through 4 weeks, which might seem like an overreaction, might seem crazy, but they haven't looked like a football team that's capable of winning 6 games. They should be 0-4. They should have lost to Troy. They should be 0-4 right now. So
agreed.
I don't know how we can say confidently that this is a team that's even going to play in a bowl game this year.
Yeah, I don't see how they do either. The Clemson Tigers are just playing bad football right now, and it's crazy to see because they come in so overranked. You have so much hype around Cade Klubnik, Dabo Swinney, one of the top coaches in the sport, and then they just come out and perform this way. This team is really starting to shape up like the Florida State Seminoles did last year. Like they were great the season before. It's not that Clemson was great the season before, but you were solid the year before. It's not an exact comparison, of course, but you have Clemson coming in. You expect them to be good from the prior season. You have Florida State coming in, albeit they were undefeated and had the historic snub out of the CFP. You expected them to be good. They started off horrible, had the worst offense in the nation, ended up going 2-10. Now you have Clemson starting 1-3. They really should be 0-4. It really feels like the same skid, these top tier teams that have been around in college football for so long. And now Clemson is just falling down the rabbit hole. Syracuse came out and was just absolutely torching Clemson's defense. I mean, Syracuse had 10 plus plays. Excuse me. Syracuse had over 10 plays of 10 plus yards in just the first half. I think it was actually 12 plays of 10 plus yards in the first half. So it was just very clear that they were not going to be letting up on the Clemson defense. And Dabo Swinney even said at halftime it was the worst half of defense that he had ever coached, that he had ever played. 300 plus yards given up, 17 minutes time of possession is crazy. That is literally controlling the ball for almost an entire quarter and some. I mean, yeah, getting close to splitting it down the middle, but I think it's the 300 plus yards that really rings out for me. Clemson is the only team that is a Power 5 team who trailed by 7 points in every game and has not had their head coach fired because the name is Dabo Swinney. UCLA fired their head coach and Virginia Tech fired their head coach. Like they just were not playing around when it came to the way the season was playing out. The lightning delay really gave Clemson a chance to rally. The fact that Steve Angeli, the quarterback for Syracuse, ended up having to come in place of was that correct? Am I thinking of the correct name? Yes, Steve Angeli was in, and then he goes down with a non-contact leg injury.
Mm-hmm.
And then now Clemson has the break of not only a weather delay, which they got to deal with in the prior week, but now you have the backup quarterback. And they're still not even able to benefit off of that. It was very sad to know that coaching aspect was still not able to come forward for the Clemson Tigers. Syracuse didn't turn the ball over. They held Clemson to horrible third downs, actually 3 of 12 in the game, almost 400 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And Cade Klubnik was sacked 3 times, had 5 TFLs in this game. I mean, it was just very rough down the stretch for Clemson. They really had no control in this football game. And you just continue to start asking the question, do the Clemson Tigers need to fire their head coach? Does Dabo Swinney really need to be held to the hot seat? Because how many weeks of excuses or bad play and him talking at the podium are we really going to take as fans and just watchers of the sport and honest analysts and reporters like you and I that make content and really wonder if the time is going to come? He's been with the organization for 17 years, if I remember correctly. Dabo Swinney is one of the top coaches in college football. We understand that the Clemson Tigers have been built into what they are, having Dabo there, and Dabo's done a lot in his tenure. But time does come for legends, and it does come for franchises and brands like the Clemson Tigers, to where you just have to start asking questions. Will he be able to get them to the promised land? What does it look like down the rest of the stretch? Is Clemson ever going to be able to really contend with Dabo Swinney again? Because Cade Klubnik is also your quarterback. Your defense still looked like that coming down the stretch. By the numbers, Clemson's offense is 96th in the country in points and averaging just 19.3 points a game. That's the worst pace than when they came in 2021 after Trevor Lawrence went to the NFL draft and DJ Uiagalelei was with the Clemson Tigers. And it was a horrible outing. There was a big time 2021 skid with the Clemson Tigers. This is looking worse than that. And this is 4 years later, with you coming into the nation ranked where you were, coming into the season ranked where you were in the nation. Clemson even got a break, like I said, with a backup quarterback, with a weather delay. Like, those are things that, as an elite coach in Dabo Swinney that you're supposed to be, and I believe he still is, he's just not playing like it right now. He's just not coaching like it right now. Those are advantages that you really have to jump in on. But I mean, they went down 24-7 early in the second quarter. And then once Adam Randall fumbled, which is really their best player, you gave him his flowers on the all-purpose yards. I really just knew it was over. Here's what I'll leave you with. In 4 games this year, Clemson has already trailed for 133 minutes. That's only 14 less minutes than they trailed the entirety of last season, and they played 14 total games. They trailed for 147 minutes total last year in 14 games. They have trailed for 133 minutes this year in 4 games, 10 less than that. Basically 3.5 times less, like however you want to slice this cookie, this pie, this pizza, whatever you want to look at it as. It is not pretty for the Clemson Tigers right now. And I just think the fan base, the people of the SEC, really have to start asking a question of, is Dabo Swinney really on the way out? You called it early on. We're just going to continue to give you flowers as we recap college football week over week over week. Number 22, Auburn traveled to Oklahoma. It was a great SEC matchup. Oklahoma ends up pulling this one out 24-17. One of the Heisman favorites, John Mateer, was showing the nation what he is made of. Jackson Arnold's revenge game is spoiled. What is your take on this one?
I don't understand the Jackson Arnold hype. I really don't. Or like the excitement around, like maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. But I watched that game, and I did miss the first part of it because I was on Protect Our Queens. We were previewing the WNBA semi, so I did miss about the first quarter or so of that game. But once I finally watched, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I know you played at Oklahoma last year, and I know that people were pretty fond of him. Not saying he's like one of the best in the country, but like I'm watching him, and consistently he's reminding me of like when I watch Caleb Williams for the Bears, and I'm watching Caleb Williams take sack after sack after sack after sack after sack because he won't get rid of the football. Jackson Arnold's, I believe his average time to throw in this game today was somewhere around 3.75 seconds,
Oof.
which technically, officially,
It's like
it is
60% longer than the
recommended a
average.
quarterback gets the ball out of their hands in 2.5 seconds. Either you're making a throw or you're running with the football after 2.5 seconds. And time after time, I even think back to the very first possession. In fact, it might have actually been the very first play in the second half for them when R. Mason Thompson finally was able to come into the game because he wasn't allowed to play in the first half because of a targeting he got in the second half of last week's game. And the very first play from scrimmage, he gets a sack because Jackson Arnold is just standing there with the ball in his hand. And like, so like a part of me wants to give credit to Auburn's defense because they did great. But a part of me also is like, a lot of the sacks that he took, he had no business taking. And that's really my big takeaway. Like, love the SEC football that was being played. It was everything that you would expect an SEC football game to look like. But I'm just really scratching my head on what exactly is the appeal of Jackson Arnold. Because he did not look like a guy, I'm not even going to say ready to. He didn't look like a guy that was capable of playing the SEC, which is confusing to me because he played in the SEC last season. So I'm not really understanding where the disconnect is with Jackson Arnold, but that was probably the worst quarterback performance I saw all day today. I couldn't believe like timeout. I'm like, dude, throw the ball away. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Throw it. Like, and it's not
Yeah.
like and it's
Oklahoma's D-line came to play too.
they did.
Oklahoma's
They really,
defense
really
shocked
did.
me today. I think
But
it's more of an indictment on Auburn's offensive line and how badly they folded for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But continue for sure.
But also too, like I would just say, it's not like Auburn's receivers are incapable of playing good football.
Right.
I think what it is I think the problem is Jackson Arnold doesn't trust his receivers. Because there are a lot of those instances where you're looking and it's like, okay, there's some favorable one-on-one matchups where at some point you just got to put the ball where only your guy can get it and just see if he can make a play. And he just wasn't doing that. And so I don't know exactly what was missing there. I don't know if maybe just the task of going in to Norman for the first time since leaving there last season, having to play on the road in your first taste of SEC football play this year. I don't know if that was just too daunting of a task for him or what, but he did not look like a quarterback that can take what is a pretty talented Auburn football team into other hostile territories or even host other good SEC football teams this year and win a football game. He looked like he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, and that's going to be really hard when you have a defense like Oklahoma. You're playing in that environment. You're playing against Brent Venables. Your offensive line looks the way that it does. And here's the thing too. Yes, Jackson Arnold was an SEC quarterback last year. Let's not forget that Texas and Oklahoma just came into the SEC last year, so we just really got to see what they were made of. The only reason this was called a bona fide SEC matchup is because Oklahoma joined the conference last year, which I have no problem with. I think it's awesome that Oklahoma and Texas are now in the conference. I think it makes for great matchups. We got back-to-back years of Georgia, Texas. You understand how I feel about the SEC. I was like, bro, turn on the SEC football. Now, when you look at how Jackson Arnold was really playing last year in Oklahoma, it was bad. It was very bad, but he also was not set up for success. Oklahoma was a horribly coached team last year. I think the way they've been able to turn it around has been great. John Mateer has been well for them. And obviously you look at Brent Venables just really being able to right some wrongs that he had, in the prior year. Now Jackson Arnold is in a more sound system, a better ran, football program in the Auburn Tigers. So he is now going to be getting his feet wet. He's going to be seeing, hey, when I go up against a defense like this in Oklahoma, who is now going to be qualified, yes, they're an SEC team, but it's not the SEC defense elk we think of like Georgia, like Florida, like Kentucky. And I'm not trying to sit here and take away from them because they are in the SEC, but big football heads like you and I and people listening know exactly what I'm talking about. Jackson Arnold is just going to have to continue to improve in bona fide SEC play as time goes on, because when you're going to be facing a team like Oklahoma and you're making an attempt at a revenge game, there's going to be some problems that you're definitely going to have to deal with. And they were all over this one for Auburn. I mean, the stadium was rocking early on for Oklahoma. I was like, oh yeah, this is a big time environment. Like, they are out there in Norman. They are going to be playing today. You had the Heisman favorite, John Mateer, or one of the favorites, and this Oklahoma team really getting a chance to prove themselves versus Jackson Arnold, who was coming in for that revenge game. And like, when Jackson Arnold took the huge sack on literally the first drive of the game, like, that clearly set the precedent for what was coming up next. It didn't look good, and that trend just kept going. He was sacked 7 times in the first half. Oklahoma only had 7 sacks in total through 12 quarters of football play this year. In 3 games, they had 7 sacks. In 2 quarters, 30 minutes of game time against the Auburn Tigers at home today or tomorrow yesterday by the time you're getting this, they had 7 sacks on him, and he took another big hit on Auburn's first drive in the second half. Now, he was kind of, splitting upwards into the pocket, and Oklahoma was doing a good job of kind of crashing down because Jackson Arnold is a athletically gifted quarterback, and he can definitely make, plays happen with his legs. But it was just time and time again. I mean, they finished on the day 10 sacks, 7 TFLs. He was pressured on 46% of his dropbacks. And I honestly, I would argue there was a time or two he was tackled at the line of scrimmage. I'm like, if he would have been 6 inches behind, we're talking about over double-digit sacks, like 11, 12 sacks today on Jackson Arnold. There was some big controversy on the first offensive drive for Oklahoma, though. What looked like a scoop and score for Auburn was a good review, and it was actually overturned. They just had to take it frame by frame. That could have been a big part for Auburn. There was a lot of points that Auburn football left on the board today, but John Mateer just showed his absolute skill set, the athleticism early on. There was also a wild sequence really early in this one too. So the broadcast shows Jackson Arnold really embracing the crowd as they boo him. He's like, "Hey, let me hear it. You guys know that I transferred over here to the SEC or really to another SEC team." He throws a 45-yard bomb where PI really should have been called. Then he almost throws a pick six that looked absolutely awful. Then he scrambles for an insane first down. It was just really like a north and south moment for Jackson Arnold. And that's ironically kind of what he turned out to have, all game. But Auburn, again, left a ton of points on the board. Specifically, I can count 17 points that they left on the board between two overthrown touchdowns by Jackson Arnold and then an awfully missed field goal. And there were just multiple times in the second half in the fourth quarter where Jackson Arnold was overthrowing wide open receivers or just not able to put the football where it needed to be. Auburn had a special teams gaffe in this game where the punter for some reason thought he was a running back in the first or second. I think it was the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken, when the game was only 3-3. Like, he still could have tried to boot that off of his left foot or something, but it was very, very rough. Obviously was able to flip the field for Oklahoma, and I want to say they capitalized off that. Auburn wasn't able to run the ball very well. I mean, they had minimal rushing yards in this one too. Now, there was another controversial part in this game. It was an illegal touchdown, essentially. Now, I don't think this was the reason that Auburn lost the football game. Yes, they lost by 7, so you could hindsight analyze this, take it out, and say that they could have went to overtime. So there was an Oklahoma player who caught the touchdown on this busted coverage, so it looked like he was leaving the field of play, but then he was involved in the play. Auburn's head coach Hugh Freeze was absolutely irate. He was furious about it, and honestly, I don't blame him. So what the ref said is the player was inside the numbers, the hashes, when or the numbers in terms of, like, the numbers on the boundaries, right inside the out of bounds. He was inside of those numbers when the ball was cleared to play, which he was, and he looked like he was leaving the field of play, kind of gingerly walking off the field. Everybody was anticipating him to do so, but he stayed on. They snapped the ball. He ran down wide open. John Mateer touchdown pass. The rules analyst clearly said that you cannot do that, but that was never reviewed. That was never brought back up, which I thought was very crazy because this is an SEC matchup. And I can't lie, the refs were pretty challenged in this game to have to officiate some of this stuff. But yes, it was very interesting to see how that play was called out pretty quick on the broadcast by rules analysts, but it seems like the SEC refs didn't even really want to, give it a second look. You even had Oklahoma fumbling on the handoff in the middle of the third quarter. Like, that was an opportunity for Auburn to get back into the football game. They did end up tying it before the first half was over, but they didn't cap off that turnover very well, which I thought, again, was just more points that they left on the board. But there were really some bad breaks for Auburn in this game. Like, if you're an Auburn fan, I feel for you. You had a scoop and score called back, which was a good call. That's a 7-point swing. You had the illegal touchdown by Oklahoma. That's another 7-point swing. 7 sacks, 10 TFLs in the first half. You end up getting sacked 10 times, like I said. So it might have been, I believe it was 10 sacks, 14 TFLs. It was very, very rough, man. I mean, I don't understand how Jackson Arnold did not potentially suffer an injury in this game. And I got to say, too, the way that the refs were able to rule a play later on in the game, it was a throw from Mateer to Satinia. It was well officiated. I really thought that's how a catch should have been. I wish I had the play to pull up specifically for you guys, but what happened is basically he caught it, possession, 2 feet, but then as he ran out of bounds, he bobbled it and dropped it. And, I feel like normally in the past they would have called that not a catch because he didn't survive the process. But if you have possession and then 2 feet, once you step out, the play is over. So dropping the ball should be irrelevant. And that's kind of how they had it come in and really be able to, benefit them. But Mateer had that throw to Satinia and then, or Satinia. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I'm sure I'll get roasted down in the comments. Then he had a rushing touchdown to make it, for 22 points. That makes 10 straight games with a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown for Jackson Arnold. And it's just very unfortunate that Auburn dominated time of possession, but they couldn't get out of their own way. Penalties, sacks, the Oklahoma defense, their offensive line, which again ended up being their Achilles heel, and it ended the game with a safety. I just thought that was really the ultimate embarrassment point for Auburn in this one. So Auburn takes the L. Oklahoma does take the win. And I really thought after the game started that I wish I would have flipped my pick over to Auburn, but Oklahoma held it down, and it was very nice to see. Unranked South Carolina does end up falling to number 23 Missouri, 29-20. Lanorris Sellers did end up playing in this football game. It was kind of weird. We didn't hear anything about his injury update really throughout the rest of the weekend or through the week up until they just said, hey, he was clear to play and he was good to go. What was your takeaways on this one, Marcus?
I think once again, and this is something that I've said to you before, I think the race between the most exciting quarterback in the country is going to go is between Lanorris Sellers and Tommy Castellanos. Right now, Tommy Castellanos is winning that race, mainly because his team is better. His team is undefeated. But I thought this was a good game. I mean, Missouri 285 yards on the ground, bro. Like
Yeah.
that's really the story right there. Their QB, he did go down the field. He got the fourth quarter touchdown drive that was that the including the 16-yard touchdown run by Jamal Roberts. Then, of course, he had the 2-point conversion. But Lanorris, first game back from an injury in that last game against Ole Miss, he throws for 302 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he only had, but again, like the running game in South Carolina, they had -9 rushing yards. And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is SEC football. If you can't run the football, you're not going to win a game. Like,
Yep.
and we saw that twice today, right? We saw that a little bit in the Auburn game. They absolutely lost the game in the trenches and they lost the game overall. We saw that in this game between Mizzou and South Carolina. They lost the game in the trenches. They lost the game overall. Missouri, just a nice note, I thought, they have won 14 straight at home.
Yep.
You and I have had a couple conversations about how surprisingly tough it is when good SEC teams go to Kentucky and struggle a bit because of how good they are at home. I think Missouri is also that in that conversation of good to great SEC teams, we sometimes see struggle in Missouri because they're a really good team to play. They're a good team and they're tough to play at home, and we see that now.
Oh, yeah.
14 straight home wins. I just, you know, my only real thing is I do think that this is kind of an unfortunate way to start the season. It's the SEC. It's going to be hard to come back from what would now be a 1-2 start if you're South Carolina, or maybe they're 2-2 on the season. I thought that maybe just the connection of Nick Harbor and Lanorris Sellers could have been enough to maybe have them be a sleeper in the conference. But when you're starting the season off this way, it's going to be really, really tough to bounce back from that. Not when you've got Georgia, not when you've got Tennessee, not when you have even a team like Missouri who's playing really good football right now. If I'm not mistaken, Missouri is undefeated or they only have 1 loss. So like it's going to be
4-0.
tough. Yeah,
Mizzou.
it's going to be tough to try to come back from that. The only other thing for me that kind of stood out for from here is, I just think sometimes we see Shane Beamer sometimes he overthinks and sometimes he oversimplifies. And I think today he oversimplified a little bit too much. I think when you, as good as Lanorris Sellers is, you want to run the game, you want to run the ball as much as possible to kind of ease him back into things. And I know it wasn't working, but South Carolina's got a good enough of an offensive line and a good enough of a running back room where they should have kept trying. They should have really, really kept trying. So that's really the only thing for me that I just feel like hopefully next week they can kind of bounce back from that, or next game they have, they kind of bounce back and he doesn't oversimplify, because we saw last season when he doesn't oversimplify and when he doesn't overthink, South Carolina can be a really good football team. So hopefully they can bounce back and maybe they can still have a chance to get the double-digit wins on the season.
Yeah, I hope so. Being 2-2 at this point and taking a loss to Vanderbilt, which I thought it was unfair for them to get dropped. Yeah, I understand they were losing 21-7 when Lanorris went out, but the offense had 7 possessions and 3 turnovers and no scores once Lanorris went out. And if you really want to talk about the context of a win, and we know how good Lanorris Sellers is, now we're not even trying to give him potential hype. We're trying to give him real factual evidence that backs his play. And then it's like you want to discount them for that. It was what it was because now they got unranked, and then now they just lost to number 23 Mizzou only by 9. They were on the road, though. Lanorris played. He did have 300 yards, but you could not run the football very well. And the AP poll, the committees are going to look at that when it comes time. So it's going to be very hard for South Carolina to be able to rebound from this. And it sucks because they're probably one of the better, if not the best 2-2 football team in college football right now. But Lanorris Sellers playing really swung the outcome of this game into South Carolina's favor, even though they were not able to come out with the win. And it gave us a nice SEC showdown. Again, another one. Mizzou had a 13-game win streak at home. They win big. They now extend it. And South Carolina's offense, again, was awful last week without Lanorris Sellers, and they turned the ball over a lot. That was not something that they did in this football game, thankfully. Now, the penalties absolutely crushed them in this one. They had 7 offensive penalties in total, really just heading into the fourth quarter. I think if I'm let me double check here on the penalties. because I feel like they accumulated. So they ended up having 14 penalties for 98 yards in this football game. They ended up winning the turnover battle, but they lost time of possession 24-35. Like you said, 285 rushing yards for Mizzou. That is very clear that South Carolina has a major weakness against defending the run. They
Yeah.
just couldn't stop it. Both running backs combined for Mizzou had over 200 rushing yards, had 6+ yards per carry. It was just, I mean, they were absolutely getting gutted. Gutted. Ahmad Hardy, is that Ashton Genty from last year? This man broke like
Hey, man.
15 tackles just in this game. He leads the country in broken tackles, and he is an elite running back, it looked like, after this game. I mean, he is going to be getting put on a lot of prospect boards, getting looked at by a lot of a lot of NFL teams. And I don't know where his classman rank is. Obviously, I will look into that more. But with the way he played, if he keeps it up, whether it's at Mizzou, if he hits the portal, it's going to be very special for him. Shout out to Ahmad Hardy. He really showed South Carolina what he was made of. And that's exactly why this game got away from South Carolina in critical moments. That situational football was just won time and time and time again by Mizzou. And then on the flip side, like you said, South Carolina could not run the football whatsoever. And it was huge for them getting beat like that at the point of attack. I mean, the huge, tough run for Roberts to score and go ahead was just kind of the epitome of South Carolina just getting pushed around all night long. And Bo Pribula, the backup to Drew Aller in Penn State, he is now the starting quarterback at Mizzou. That man was looking very, very nice on some read options, on some design quarterback runs. I mean, when he had to extend plays, he was very aggressive. He ran with good vision, just multiple big-time scrambles in the game. There was a 3rd and 37 in this football game that Lanorris Sellers connected with Nick Harbor for 33 yards on, that I was just like, how did Mizzou's defense even let up on that? That is strictly on them. I mean, South Carolina being able to even get a field goal off of that, I thought was really nice to watch as the game kind of carried out. Clearly it was too little too late. But Lanorris Sellers also took a couple of bad sacks in this football game as well, specifically in the third quarter, like 20+ yard sacks behind the line of scrimmage. It was horrible, just absolutely killing offensive drives. 5 sacks taken for Lanorris Sellers himself, actually entering the fourth quarter. And you look at his stat line, right? Like 18 for 28, over 300 yards. You love what Lanorris did in this game. There was no doubt that he really played a part, and South Carolina probably would have, now let's take the word probably out, they would have lost by more than 9. I don't know if they would have got the end zone maybe even once. Maybe a touchdown and a field goal for tonight is what it would have been, because again, they had 7 offensive possessions last week without him. They turned the ball over 3 times, or maybe 5 times, excuse me. And the last 3 possessions all ended in giveaways. It was horrible. It was horrible. So you have to give a shout out to South Carolina. You have to give a shout out to Lanorris Sellers, because the fact that he was able to play, his injury did look not like it was very severe, but we also were not, inside of his helmet when he got hit, and concussions are a very serious thing in the sport of football. So I'm glad he was able to battle back. Miami handles Florida 26-7. Carson Beck is still the exact same quarterback that he was with the Georgia Bulldogs, but I will reserve my comments on that until we get into the start of this segment. Florida keeps it tough for Miami. DJ Lagway is still proving that he is one of the worst quarterbacks in the nation, and he is slowly ruining Billy Napier's non-existent legacy at the University of Florida. He is now 20-22 as a head coach. Take it away, Marcus.
I have 3 takeaways. I just want you to walk with me here. We go through one by one. First starters, Miami, Florida State. It's an ACC championship matchup. I think we're going to see it. First of all, Florida State smacked State around as to be expected. They dropped 66 today on that 775 yards of offense, and they had 498 rush yards, which is a school record. But Miami specifically, they're number 4, right? They beat on Florida tonight. They had 116 yards from Mark Fletcher. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. They're undefeated. And the great thing about this is we're going to get a taste of this in 2 weeks when they play each other on October 1st. But I do think that's the ACC championship matchup. Now, as for the Florida side of things, Billy Napier better thank the Lord above that it is week 4 and there's still a chance for him to save him job. But every game after this, he better pray to whatever God he believes in that they win. Because he is one more bad performance away from not being allowed to get back on the bus to go back to campus.
Straight up.
Here's a couple things for you. Okay. They are 1-3. The last time the Gators were 1-3 was 1986, nearly 40 years ago. Billy Napier is 20-22 overall. They're 0-2 in conference so far this season. They are 4-16 versus ranked teams under Billy Napier. They had 32 yards of offense in the first half, I believe it was today. They still
one first down in the first half.
Yeah, they still have to play Texas, I believe, and they still have to play Georgia, I believe, at some point this season. So
Yep.
Billy Napier better hope to the Lord above that he has a job, not even next season, that he has a job by the end of this season. And as for DJ Lagway, I mean, I don't know what other way we need to say it. He needs to be benched. He completed 12 of 23 passes for 61 yards. You talk about an embarrassment for a Power 5 or I guess Group of 4 quarterback, right?
For an SEC quarterback.
For an SEC quarterback, 61 total yards. This was the fewest yards in a game by Florida since 1999. This is coming a week after DJ Lagway threw 5 interceptions, which was the most by a Florida quarterback since 1992. He has no touch on his deep balls. He can't read pressure, and he kills their drive. Their offense sucks, and there's too much talent on their offense for the offense to look as bad as it is. So if Billy Napier wants to keep his job, DJ Lagway needs to be benched. And if DJ Lagway doesn't want to be benched, he needs to learn how to play football. Neither of those two things are going to happen. So Billy Napier, bye-bye. DJ Lagway, bye-bye. I said this to you last night after Stuff About Sports. DJ Lagway, Arch Manning, 2 cheeks, same ass. That's all I'm saying.
That is so good. And it is so true. And it is so warranted at this moment for how they're both playing. Thankfully, Arch Manning can come out and be confusing and at least put up numbers against pedestrian teams. But, you know, DJ Lagway is a non-existent quarterback, really. DJ Lagway, every time he takes a snap and he has to process or go through his reads, which is processing, or extend the play, or stretch his vision down the field, which goes back to processing, which is the biggest thing a quarterback can do is understand the field and read the defense in front of them and understand the play that they're running. He looks confused. DJ Lagway looks nervous. He looks sloppy. There are no mechanics. There is no confidence. DJ Lagway he genuinely looks lost at the position. And I saw it multiple times and I'm probably just being very picky, but it's even the way he holds the football. It's not for him. It's not for him. I'll say it right now. The Florida Gators have the worst head coach quarterback combination in football right now, probably for a notable team. Absolutely. Especially in the SEC.
Yeah.
You're not going to look at Arkansas, even though they just lost to Memphis today, and say that. You're not going to look at any of these other teams in the SEC and say that, because the quarterback play itself is demoting Billy Napier to a level that I don't even know if it's really undeserved, because Billy Napier has not been a good coach since he's been at Florida. This is the guy that's also calling plays. Okay.
And that's the part that I think needs to be understood. He's also the person calling the plays.
He is the one calling plays as well. He's the one choosing this quarterback, and he's the one calling the plays. You got to be held accountable.
And look, Holly Rowe did a nice piece at the beginning and pre-games, like, oh, they went out to dinner, no phones. There was some, and it was all great.
I heard that.
And it's like, look, love that for them, Holly. But here's the thing. This is the SEC.
Yep.
You can't.
There are no feel-good stories to make you better. You have to actually play better.
And then not bounce back the next. If you're going to have a bad game in the SEC, okay, hold on. If you have a bad game in the SEC, you have to bounce back the following week with a game back to just be on par.
Yep.
But DJ Lagway didn't have a bad game last week. DJ Lagway had the worst game by a Florida quarterback in 33 years. Mm-hmm. And then he followed that up with an offensive performance that was the worst in almost 30 years. So either next week he is a generational quarterback and he is the best quarterback in the country.
He can't make it to next week. Billy Napier cannot
Like,
allow him to
I
make
don't
it to next
understand,
week.
and that's the part that I don't understand is I get that he's a sophomore and he's young and you want him to learn, but this is the Southeastern Conference. Like, that's what this is. You don't have time to give DJ Lagway time to figure it out in game. Not when he's given you two of the worst consecutive weeks of quarterback play that we've ever seen in college from a Power 5 quarterback in either of our lifetimes, for sure. There's no possible way. There's no reasonable justification. And in fact, I will go as far as to say, if DJ Lagway trots onto the field their next game as the starting quarterback, then Florida's athletic director needs to tap Billy Napier on the shoulder, ask him to turn in his headset, and send him back to his office so he can box it up and go home.
Yeah.
There's no reason why DJ
I
Lagway should
think
be
booze
starting
will rain
another
down next week.
football game. Absolutely.
I will be shocked. I will be shocked. Genuinely. I didn't expect after one game for him to get benched, right? Because you got to let your quarterback sink. You got to let him suffer sometimes. I mean, we've seen it in the NFL.
Mhm.
But after this week, I don't know how back-to-back weeks like this can really be tolerated. I don't, man. I really don't. And the booze are going to rain down.
He's setting all the wrong records.
He is
setting all the wrong records.
He is.
It's ridiculous.
He absolutely is. There was really this underlying expectation of Miami should handle Florida going into this game. And the final score and the way that I introduced the segment definitely sounds like they did. But this was a 13-7 game.
Yeah.
Or, This was a 13-7 game. This was a 13-0 game.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a 13-0 game in the fourth quarter. This was a 13-0 game at halftime. Miami did not score in the third quarter. Florida comes out and scores. This is a 13-7 ball game with 11 minutes to go in the fourth before Miami chews 7 minutes off the clock with Fletcher and the other monster running back that they have with their duo to be able to just take this game home for Miami. But, it's also a rivalry game, and Florida does have a good defense that stifled LSU and clearly was able to kind of hold Miami, to under wraps tonight. And it's an interconference matchup, too, that we were able to see, which ended up turning out very well. I thought it ended up being a worthy watching matchup, at least into the middle of the fourth quarter and really kind of towards the end, until Miami was able to pull away with it. But it was crazy how Miami started. They mounted a 15-play drive to open the game. They went 5 for 5 on third down on that opening drive. But then credit to Florida because Miami finished the first half 0 for 4 on third down after going 5 for 5 to open the drive. And I want to say Miami actually finished 8 for 16 in total in this game. So they literally went 3 for 13 the rest of the way on third down. And that's just a testament to what Florida's defense has been able to do all season long. And it was a question of can Florida and DJ Lagway bounce back after an awful prior week. And it definitely did not look like it in the first half. It took until the fourth quarter for you to wonder if there was even an offense that was alive inside the brain of Billy Napier, even capable coming from a quarterback in DJ Lagway. Florida was outgained by almost 200 yards in the first half. They were 0 for 7 on third down. They were 0 for 12 on the day. 0 for 13 on the day on third down. They did not convert a single third down in the game, but they were 3 for 3 on fourth down. They were perfect on fourth down. They were 3 for 6 on fourth down. Let me not give them the benefit of them being perfect. They were better on fourth down in times where they didn't have to go for it a few times, but the analytics said so. And Billy Napier is like, well, there's really probably all 4 down territory with this piss poor offense here. They were better on fourth down than they were on third down. They did not have a single conversion on probably the most important down in football. And clearly DJ Lagway is not good whatsoever. But on third down, it's even worse. 3 and out on 5 of the 6 drives for Florida in the first half. It was the fewest yards and a half since 2012, the 32 yards. And they had 1 first down. It's just very clear that the Florida Gators head football coach is not good. Billy Napier is not a good head coach, and he is not a good play caller right now. And he needs to look into either Tramel Jones Jr. or he needs to look into Harrison Bailey, as those are his QB2 and QB3 on his depth chart. Because when you are going to be rolling out a jittery, nervous, sloppy, rough decision-making quarterback in DJ Lagway, where it doesn't look like he knows what he's doing most of the time, you cannot expect the fan base or the athletic director to support you as the head coach. And y'all already know I'm going to come on here and have my comments about Carson Beck because I told you about him early in the day. Look at Carson Beck struggling against an SEC defense. What would you know? What would you know? That brother went to the ACC and didn't think he's going to have to come back and see an SEC defense. But what would you know?
Yeah.
Carson Beck played like the same quarterback he did last year with the Bulldogs when he had to play against top-tier defenses. He threw 3 interceptions against Florida last year as a Bulldog. He had the stretch of 7, 8, 9 turnovers in 3 or 4 games between Alabama and Texas and all these other smash-mouth matchups. And he ran into the same type of buzzsaw tonight in Florida's defense. He just better be lucky that it wasn't a competent offense. And it's not like they were turning over Carson Beck a lot, right? It's not like they were stealing possessions from Miami's offense. But when you go and look at Carson Beck's stats from the game and how he played overall, he was 17 of 30 for 160 yards and 1 interception. Thank goodness for Mark Fletcher Jr., 24 for 116 and a tud. Thank goodness for Shamar Brown, 18 for 80 and 2 tuds.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Carson Beck, because we saw you. We saw what kind of quarterback you still are against an SEC defense. You can't hide from me. Yeah. You can't. We don't lie on here. We hold people accountable. You thought you were going to be able to go to the ACC and it was going to be all fun and games. And don't get me wrong, you're sporting a sexy 4-0 record. You're probably going to be, who knows, but with the way the rankings have been, maybe top 3 team now. You were number 4. But notice how there was that timely interception thrown by Carson Beck after Florida's first touchdown, which gave Florida all of the energy in this game for about 3 minutes until Billy Napier was given the responsibility of calling the plays and having DJ Lagway execute them, which we saw the atrocity all game. Billy Napier, again, has an albatross and DJ Lagway hanging around his neck. And it's just, it's horrible. It's horrible. But Carson Beck showed us that he is the exact same quarterback tonight that he was last year with the Georgia Bulldogs. The offense went stale, and his play was a big part in that. Florida started blanketing his receivers, and then he took a sack when a blitz came in at a key moment, which I thought was a great play call. We saw the offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson, start getting conservative with these screenplays for Carson Beck because that's what Carson Beck needs and resorts to when defensive talent is heightened. And again, don't forget, this is the same Florida team mostly that Carson Beck threw 3 interceptions to last year when he was a Georgia Bulldog. But we saw Florida take all of 3 quarters, so shout out to Miami's defense, and also it is an indictment on that Florida offense. We've talked about Napier and Lagway extensively here. You go on an 11-play, 80-yard touchdown drive, but in the whole first half, they had 22 plays for 32 yards and no points until they're finally able to get on the board. They're able to go 3 of 3 on fourth down, up until they missed the last 3 on 4th down to finish out the game. Florida produced more yards in the third quarter than they did all of the first half, while you had Miami running 15 plays for less than 50 yards coming out of the second half before, obviously, in the fourth quarter, like I said, they chewed up 7 minutes of clock. They scored a touchdown. But a big kudos to Miami for just running the hell out of the football with Fletcher and Brown down the stretch. And that's how you win football games, man. That's how you win matchups like this when you are playing a rivalry team, when you're playing an SEC defense, and you just have to be able to absolutely take it home. Any outstanding remarks from this week of college football? I know we had some interesting things kind of unfold. I know you said Arch Manning was pissing you off. We had Florida State put up almost 800 yards of offense. Just, I guess like they say game ball on stuff about sports. We won't call it a game ball here on NFL with AJL, but any other burning takeaways from week 4 of college football?
I just want to begin to push the agenda that Malik Washington is better than Arch Manning. I just want to do that. He's a true freshman. He's the freshman quarterback from Maryland, and he absolutely looks better than Arch Manning so far through 4 weeks of football. He looked great today. In Maryland's game against Wisconsin, he was responsible for all 3 of their touchdowns, 2 through the air, 1 on the ground with his legs. Malik Washington, up to this point, 773 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Arch Manning, 579 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he's only played 3 games. Washington's QBR is well above 50. His team is 4-0, and he's slinging the ball efficiently. Meanwhile, Arch Manning, they're 2-1. He's barely completing 55% of his passes. If you're just looking at quarterback for quarterback, I'm willing to bet Steve Sarkisian would love to have Malik Washington. Malik Washington, as a true freshman, looks like a quarterback ready to play SEC talent. And I'm going to continue to say this. The Texas Longhorns, good football team, a lot of talent, both sides of the ball. Arch Manning, big problem. Big problem. And you know firsthand, as a Georgia Bulldog fan, having to sit through the Carson Beck era in Georgia, no matter how talented the defense is, and no matter how talented the skill positions are on offense, if the quarterback is pedestrian even for a second in the SEC, you might as well not even come out to play the football game. And it is so infuriating to me that we watch Arch Manning come out today and throw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against who they play today? Sam Houston
Houston.
State.
Mm-hmm.
But last week against UTEP, he's dancing around in the red zone in the fourth quarter or on a 4th and goal and throws the most boneheaded pick I've probably ever seen a quarterback throw in the red
Horrible
zone
decision.
in my life. Horrible decision making. And people are still going to wake up on Monday morning and get on all their talk on their radio shows, on their TV shows, and praise Arch Manning for playing the way he played. But when the rubber hits the road and when it's time for Texas to go and play other teams that they need to play, when it's time for Texas to go play Florida in 2 weeks in Florida, when it's time for them to host Oklahoma the week after that, when it's time for them to go to Kentucky the week after that, go to Mississippi State, host Vanderbilt, play Georgia in Georgia, play Arkansas, close out with Texas A&M, as I've continuously said over the course of the season, until Arch Manning gets his life together, the Texas Longhorns are going nowhere. I don't care that he had 300 passing yards against Sam Houston State.
I don't either.
I don't care that he looked somewhat serviceable against San Jose State. I don't care that he got a win against UTEP. When it's time for him to play defenses that look like that Ohio State defense in week 1, he will crumble. He's going to crumble. And Arch Manning is a perfect example as to why you don't listen to everything talking heads on TV and talking heads on the radio tell you, because everyone had you believing that this man or this young guy was a generational quarterback and the next best thing and the guaranteed number 1 pick in the 2026 NFL draft next season. And so much so that people got mad at me when I said going into this year's draft that you wouldn't even take Arch Manning over Shedeur Sanders if they were both in the same draft class. And look at what we have now. Look at what we have now. Would you, all those people who told me you would absolutely take Arch Manning over Shedeur Sanders if they were in the same draft, do you still think that? No way. No way. And if you do, you're stupid. Because if Shedeur looked how Arch Manning looked through 4 weeks of football, we'd be crucifying him on national television every single week. And so I, for one, am not going to give Arch Manning the benefit of the doubt just because his last name is Manning. Because as a Manning, he should be better as a quarterback than what he is right now. Then again, I have to remember he is not, he does not come from the loins of Eli or the loins of Peyton. He's come from the loins of Cooper. Nothing wrong with Cooper. Cooper played quarterback, but he's not a Hall of Famer. So maybe we need to wait and see what Peyton's son look like. Maybe that will be the next great Manning QB. But by God, bro,
I feel like there's already been rumors about Peyton's son for some reason.
I know. I've seen a couple things. They got a commercial together, and every time I see that commercial, I'm like, I know he's the chosen one. He's the one.
Yeah.
I know he is. But all I'm saying is, and I know, Arch plays in the SEC, Malik plays in the Big Ten. All I'm saying is I'm looking at a true freshman go out here and look great and look really, really good and revitalize a program. Meanwhile, I'm looking at a guy in Arch Manning who's supposed to be doing the same thing, and he's not. And it just makes me wonder. I wonder how Texas would look if Malik Washington was their quarterback instead of Arch Manning. I think they'd be undefeated. I think they probably would have beaten Ohio State if they had Malik Washington. I really do. He's just looked better. He's looked better. And that's annoying. It's annoying because Arch should be better, but it's also not surprising because as you pointed out all the time, Arch's only real competition was against nobody football teams or in games against tough opponents that Texas was blowing out already, thanks to Quinn Ewers. And it's unfortunate that this is the reality that we're living in, but he's got to be better because the schedule is not going to get any easier. And his college career isn't going to get any easier either. They've got to figure it out with him. They really have to.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. It's Arch looked good today. And as long as Arch is able to beat the hell out of bad teams, he's going to continue to get the benefit of the doubt. But it will become a moment to where it was like the Dolphins a couple of years ago against teams above 500, or the Cowboys, to where if you can't beat a team above 500, which is going to be a solid team in the NFL and especially a very solid team in college football, if you're not able to stack up against the Georgias, against the Texas A&Ms, against the multiple teams that you named on the schedule, it's going to look very tough for them. Yeah, it's wild to see the up and down of Arch Manning, because I don't know if we're like, is it really fair to say we know exactly what he's made of because he's only in the one big game of his career against Ohio State? That's how he played, because that was week 1 to open the season. It's like, are we going to have to wait until he goes against Georgia, until he goes against A&M, until he goes against some of those other big time opponents that you were naming on the schedule, to really see, okay, now he's had a full season of starting. Now he's got tape. Now he understands what has to happen. Will he be able to be that type of quarterback? LSU finally handled business. Vanderbilt handled business. Of course, Texas handled business. Indiana beating the absolute hell out of Illinois, 63-10. A lot of people in the country bet Illinois. And obviously, as the number 9 team, they come out and they absolutely crap the bed. Clearly, hindsight, should have taken Indiana with them being the home team. Michigan and Nebraska play a tight one as well. Notre Dame's able to outlast Purdue 56-30, which that was their game the whole way. So another solid week of college football. That's going to wrap up episode 118 of the NFL with AJL. That is Marcus Talk Sports, who is with us all season long, chopping it up on college football, chopping it up on the NFL, as we only do here on NFL with AJL, and even just on more of the topics that we have, not only college, but he's been going at it a lot with us. And of course, you've seen him on some of the regular episodes as well. So be sure to check him out at Marcus Talk Sports, at Protect Our Queens, at Give Us a Shot Network, at NFL with AJL on all social media and podcast platforms. The link is in the description. Y'all, please make sure to like and share before we get out of here. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit that bell so you're always tapped in with the YouTube content, and hit us on all social media platforms. Follow, share our content, please, and thank you. Like it. Get in the comments. We see everything. As always, we love y'all. We need y'all, and we will see y'all in the next one.